All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Asian Philosophy. Today, we are going to talk about Mencius. Okay, before we start, let me share that. Okay, just 1 minute. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, you can see the schedule here, and today we will talk about the Mencius for today's section, and the next week we talk about Bhagavad Gita from chapter 1 to chapter 6, which we talk about the Karma Yoga. And SK is going to have a review for everyone, and then later on, we are going to chapter 7 and 8. And the beginning of June 3rd, I'm going to continue on our reading on Zhuangzi, and then we have done chapter 1 and chapter 2, and then I'm going to take care of the chapter 3 in June 3rd. And the chapter 3, so-called the fundamental for the cultivation of life. This one is very short, so it gives me a chance to give you a review from chapter 1, chapter 2 to chapter 3. And then that's a good time to join us to continue our reading on the Taoism philosophy. So let's start. And then today we have Huang here to take care of Mencius about the philosophy. So Huang, okay, please start.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming for my presentation this afternoon. Let's start right now with the chronology, if everyone is willing. Jason, can you show on the chronology of Chinese history, please?
You want to show this one?
No, the first slide, yes.
Okay, yeah, this one. That's the Chinese sage.
Exactly. So, this chart is useful for both reasons, to show the idea that Chinese civilization has been a civilization producing sages at certain times, and you have a general idea of Chinese chronology. So if you start from the left, you see that there's a period called legendary, and which corresponds to the Yangshao and the Longshan period. And the Longshan period is a period starting from 3000 BCE and ending around 2000 BCE. After that, you have the three royal dynasties, the Xia era, about 2000 BCE to 1600 BCE. Traditionally, the Xia dynasty started in 2070 BCE and ended in 1600 BCE. The Shang dynasty, in which writing has been invented, starting in 1600 BCE and ending in 1045 BCE. The Zhou dynasty starting in 1045 on this paper, but most historians agree now that it's rather 1046 and ending in 256 BCE. And that 256 BCE doesn't appear on the chart because we are more focusing on the spring and autumn era. Why the spring and autumn era? Because that period produced many philosophers. So the Zhou dynasty is divided between the Western Zhou dynasty from 1046 BCE to 770 BCE. That almost 300 centuries were the period when the Zhou rulers were truly kings. And after that, they had undergone a crushing defeat in 770 BCE. And from that year, they became mere political arbiter and control models. They were no longer truly kings from what is called the Eastern Zhou period. And the Eastern Zhou period is divided between the Spring and Autumn era, between 770 BCE to 453 BCE, and the Warring State period between 453 BCE to 221 BCE. And those of you who know Chinese history are aware that 221 BCE is the year of the creation of the first Chinese empire by the Qin dynasty. So I insisted to show that general chronology so that you are capable to put Mencius in a general framework of Chinese history. So Mencius was born in the 4th century BCE, and to be precise, in 372 BCE, and he died, according to tradition, in 289 BCE. So essentially, he was a man of the 4th century BCE, the same time than Plato, for example. Mencius was a scion of the Zhou dynasty, precisely, and he was an offspring from the Duke Huan of Lu, a ruler of the Lu Principality, who ruled between 711 and 694 BCE. Confucius was an offspring of the Shangying dynasty. That being said, Confucius was is still considered as what is called in Chinese Ya Sheng, okay, meaning the second sage, the first one being Confucius, of course. I would say that there are many things that we can discuss about Mencius, but he's important for epistemological reason and for political reason. And I will discuss Mencius with the concept of axio-epistemo-political triangle, translating a major concept from the Gongyang interpretation of the Spring and Autumn, which is the chronicle of the Lu Principality, but which has been used as a framework for political and philosophical expansion by the Confucian school. Without further ado, I would like someone in the group to read maybe the first page of the Mencius, and Jason, can you make appear the page 1A1, King Hui of Liang? Because in those 3 paragraphs, there are many concepts that will be expanded by me and hopefully will be discussed in the group.
You want me to show the just 1 minute. You want me to show the
text,
the
first page of the Mencius.
Eno's text?
Yes, the text just under the 2 maps.
Mencius, okay. So you can read, okay.
Okay. Is anyone willing to read that?
Oh, okay. Hold on. I already have this one. Okay, sorry. Okay, that's the one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So, okay, that's perfect. So, is someone willing to read? Don't be shy. Okay, if we have shy people this afternoon, I'm willing to read myself. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
I can
read. Okay, thank you.
I can volunteer if you like.
Okay, please. Jason, Lyndon wants to read, so we let Lyndon read.
I'll give it a go at a few paragraphs anyhow. 1A1.
Yeah.
Mencius appeared in audience before King Hui of Liang. The king said, "Aged sir, you have not regarded 1,000 li as too great a distance to travel here. Surely it must be that you have come to profit my state." Mencius replied, "Your Majesty, why must you speak of profit? Indeed, there is nothing but humanity and right. If your majesty says, whereby may I profit my state, your grandees shall say, whereby may I profit my family? And your gentlemen and common people shall say, whereby may I profit myself? When those higher and lower compete with one another for profit, the state will be in danger. In a state of 10,000 war chariots, the man who assassinates the ruler will surely have a family estate of 1,000. In a state of 1,000 war chariots, the man who assassinates the ruler will surely have a family estate of 100. Such men have a 10th share of the state's force, and this is by no means a little. But if right is placed to the rear and profit to the fore, such men will never be satisfied unless they seize it all. I can't see any more on the screen below that.
Okay. So
here we go. Yes.
Okay.
Hold on. Oh, right, got it. Never has a man of humanity abandoned his parents, and never has a man of right put himself before his ruler. May your majesty simply speak of humanity and right. Why must you speak of profit?
Thank you very much, Lyndon. So this first page of Mencius, I should say, is probably the perfect summary of the home book. And that home book is in 14 chapters. There's two ways to divide the Mencius, either 1 to 14 or 1a, 1b to 7a, 7b, which correspond to 14 chapters, of course. And in the Innu translation is divided 1a, 1b to 7a, 7b, but that is a small detail. What I want to say now is that the Mencius is the clearer version, the version which is easier to understand, if you want, written in the 4th century BCE to explain a concept in Chinese philosophy and in Chinese politics called Da Yi Tong. And Da Yi Tong means words by words, the great unity, but that great unity needs to be explained, obviously. That great unity is the unity of the cosmological order with the political order through the epistemological growth or the epistemological development. And of course, this needs an explanation. I hope that you will indulge me and accept that I use some Greek and Latin words to explain Chinese philosophy, because it might be easier for you. Jason, may I ask you to admit people rather than I have to do it during my speech?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. So in Western philosophy, you have a Latin word indicating the timeless dimension, which is tempus. And in Western philosophy too, you have two Greek words. One is kairos, K-A-I-R-O-S, indicating the epistemological development, and chronos, C-H-R-O-N-O-S, indicating the more behavioral dimension or the political dimension. The philosophical concept of Ta Yi Tong, which comes from the Gong Yang interpretation of the Chun Chu, is precisely about that axial epistemol political continuum, which the easier version to understand is in the Mencius. For those who don't know what is the Chun Chu is the spring and autumn, and that spring and autumn is one of the 5 Chinese classics. At the base, it's the chronicle of the Lu Principality, which is a sovereign's principality located in the present-day Shandong province, and that principality was the principality in which Confucius was born in 551 BCE. And Mencius himself was born in a much smaller principality called Zhou, Z-O-U, and that Zhou principality is just the neighbor of the Lu principality, just to have a little bit of geographical notions. And that Chunchu has been edited by Confucius according to tradition, and Confucius added more philosophical and epistemological consideration on a text which is quite boring at its basic reality, if you want. And in that philosophical expansion by Confucius, you have that notion of Tai Yi Tong, precisely the unity of cosmological order and of political order through epistemological development. Here is the idea. What in the West is called tempus, T-E-M-P-U-S, or the timeless dimension. It's where you can have the timeless form of beauty, goodness, and truth. Okay, and you would find very easy to make a rapprochement between the philosophy of Plato and the philosophy of Confucius and of Mencius, or generally speaking, of the Rujia, which is the Chinese name of Confucianism. And Rujia means the school of the scholars. Ru for scholar, and Jia meaning family, but in this case, family of philosopher or philosophical school. Rujia, school of the scholar. So I said that there is a timeless dimension where you have beauty, goodness, and truth. And you have an epistemological journey, which is your personal education to go to those timeless education, which is what is indicated by the Greek word kairos. And you have to translate those timeless form of goodness, beauty, and truth into time reality, into chronos. And in those time realities, those timeless forms are manifested as what Mencius called the 4 cardinal virtues. And those 4 cardinal virtues are the same cardinal virtues that are named in the Greek and Roman word, meaning justice, humanity, valor, and wisdom. The timeless dimension of truth correspond in the time dimension to wisdom. The timeless dimension, eternal form of beauty correspond to valor and humanity. The timeless form of goodness correspond to valor and humanity, and the timeless form of beauty correspond to justice. And when I'm saying that Mencius is an easier form of that same theory, of that same contemplation of the timeless reality, is that the way he explains it is maybe easier to understand, okay? And that is his famous theory of the 4 metaphysical seeds. For Mencius, because you are born as a human being, you have 4 natural metaphysical seeds in you. And those 4 metaphysical seeds are called commiseration for the first one. Well, you take it in the order you want, but I use that order. So that commiseration, if it is rightly nurtured by a classical education, it becomes it becomes compassion, okay, or humanity. And the other seed is respect. Respect, if it's rightly nurtured, becomes valor and a sense of ritual. The other one is discernment, and the sense of discernment between right and between wrong. And if it's rightly nurtured, it becomes the cardinal virtue of wisdom. And finally, a very important one, last but not least, the metaphysical seed of shame, which rightly nurtured becomes an inner sense of justice. So here I would like to have a small discussion about shame. And I would like to do it in an interactive manner. I would like someone in the group to give me a short explanation of what he or she understand as shame. Okay, I see the hands. Jason, I'm sorry, I don't know if you noticed. I don't know who put his or her
okay,
hand
let me
first.
moderate this one for you. Okay, so let's
Thank you.
start from Joe, Carly, Carly. Okay, Joe. Joe, are
Okay.
you able to speak now?
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, shame is a sense of self-awareness, that it's like an internal mechanism where you have done something that goes against what you believe to be morally correct. It also it's kind of it can be something that can be used against you as well. But in this particular instance, I think it's talking about how do we develop compassion and courtesy for others. So there's a sense of also justice, as you were talking about a little bit as well. So anyway, that's just a really quick summation.
Okay. Okay, thanks. The next one, Jason.
Let's go to Carly, please.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say something similar as far as maybe an external sense of dishonor that one may internalize, trying to evolve and turn it into an understanding or better unity with other humans.
Okay.
Next one will be Eleanor. Eleanor.
Yeah, Eleanor.
Eleanor.
Thank you. Feeling empathy and pain of others, realizing how much they suffered, and being ashamed not to be able to help change or to do anything to ease that.
Okay.
Being able to apologize and feeling regret and sympathy and signaling constantly that willing to move on and helping others.
Okay, thank you. I think there's no others, if I can see. I let you decide, Jason.
No more hands. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much for your participation, for the exploration of the concept of shame. I would like to offer what I think is related to that metaphysical concept of shame in the context of the Mencius, all right? So shame here has to be distinguished between the metaphysical shame and the social shaming game, okay? We all know that in society, there's the shaming game that I summarize by saying shame on you, okay? Which is a social mechanism of control because it goes to make you feel a distress because you are not corresponding to what is expected from the social group, okay? And that is what I call the social shaming game. But here we are speaking of the metaphysical shame, and the metaphysical shame is the inner feeling that, according to Mencius, you have it naturally because you are born human, in the sense that you would not do something that you feel ugly. And if that natural feeling that you would not do something that you feel ugly, if it's nurtured in the right way, would bring you to the inner sense of justice. And I would like to develop a little bit on the word shame. If you go on Wikipedia or if you go to a dictionary to explore the meaning of the word shame, you have two levels of explanation. First, shame, and the way I explain it is I would use psychodynamics, a concept to explain it, okay? The psychodynamic concepts of personality versus individuality. The personality is the identity that you have that you introjected because you have been born in a certain family, a certain society, and so on. Okay, as maybe you know, persona is a Latin word meaning a mask that the Roman actors put on their face to embody a character precisely. So those masks has been given to you because you had social interactions at different moments of your life. And that is the shame of at the personality level, all right? And if you read the psychodynamics or psychological books, you can see that shame at a first level of definition is a feeling of intense distress coming from a feeling of inferiority. And that feeling of inferiority mostly comes from 3 or 4 situations, okay? Unrequited love is a big one. A feeling of being excluded by a group is another big one. A feeling of being exposed and that you didn't want to be exposed is a third big one for the social shame. So that is the shame at the level of the personality. And the Chinese have 2 words that are both translated in English as faces. So you have 2 faces in Chinese. That I think that you're all aware in the West that in Eastern Asia, in East Asia, in China, you have that notion of face. And the first face is the face of the personality, in the sense that it is the face that is related to your social rank, to your lineage, to your wealth, to your power, to your network, to your connections. Okay, so that shame that is called, well, that face that is called in Chinese Meng-tzu is related to the shame, to the social shame. Okay, if you feel that you would be inferior in that social hierarchy. But here, Mencius is not talking about that shame of that face that you could feel inferior or superior depending on your status in the social hierarchy. Okay, Mencius is talking about the other face that in Chinese is called lian. And lian can be translated in English as also face, of course, but as self-respect. And that self-respect is more related to the psychodynamic concept of individuality. And that psychodynamic concept of individuality is related to what I call the epistemological growth. And that epistemological growth is the personal journey to the 4 cardinal virtues, which are the time embodiment or the time manifestation of the 3 timeless forms of beauty, goodness, and truth. Okay, and so I said that to the timeless form of truth correspond the cardinal virtue of wisdom. To the timeless form of beauty correspond the political or cardinal virtue of justice. And to the timeless form of goodness correspond the political virtues or the cardinal virtues of humanity and valor. And that's why I wanted us to listen to the first page of the Mencius, because those 35 or 40 lines is the perfect summaries of the 14 chapters. I would like to read the last 5 again, the last 5 lines that Lyndon read to us 15 minutes ago. But if right is placed to the rear and profit to the fore, such men will never be satisfied unless they seize it all. Never has a man of humanity, one of the 4 cardinal virtues coming from the timeless form of goodness, never has a man of humanity abandoned his parents, and never has a man of right justice put himself before his ruler, if that ruler is a true ruler, of course. May your majesty simply speak of humanity and right. Why must you speak of profit? Here, when I said that ruler must be understood as a true ruler, because Mencius is famous for two ideas. Wow, he produced many other ideas, but he is famous for essentially for two major ideas. And one of those two major ideas is precisely the theory of the four seeds, which rightly nurture transform themselves into the four cardinal virtues. But the other theory is that if the ruler is not a true ruler, meaning fulfilling the mandate of heaven, and the mandate of heaven can be described in many ways, but let's say that the mandate of heaven is the responsibility of the sovereign to guarantee food, peace, order, and education for the citizen of a given state. And it can be applied in a state which is not a monarchy, of course. Even if you have that expression mandate of heaven, which is a little bit reminiscent of Chinese monarchy, but it's not only about Chinese monarchy, it's a universal concept of the true ruler. And that second theory from Mencius is precisely if the ruler is not fulfilling the mandate of heaven, the people has the legitimacy to overthrow him. And that is an idea that has been not invented by Mencius, but has been invented by the advisors of the first king of the Zhou dynasty, who replaced the Shang dynasty in 1046 BCE. But Mencius expanded on that idea by saying that the people is like the water, and if the boat is not doing its work in appropriately, the people has the right to capsize the boat, meaning it's a metaphor that the people has the right, the mandate of heaven precisely, to overthrow the ruler, because the mandate of heaven works in both ways. The side of the rulers who has to fulfill his duties, and the side of the people having their own duties, meaning to replace the ruler if he's not an appropriate ruler. In this first page of the Mencius, there is a mention of King Hui of Liang. The state of Liang is also known as the state of Wei. That state was the most promising in the 4th century BCE, in the sense that since the Zhou dynasty lost its true power, it was expected by the Chinese people that one day they would be replaced by another dynasty. But that process took 500 years and ended with the creation of the first Chinese empire by the Qin kingdom in 221 BCE. But during the time of Mencius, the kingdom who was thought to be the potential creator of the first empire was precisely the kingdom of Wei, or the kingdom of Liang. And that King Hui of Liang ruled between 359 BCE to 319 BCE. So he had a very long reign, and a reign, I would say that his rule was a mixed bag, in the sense that he has done some great things, but he also has done some quite incompetent things. And ultimately, he did not achieve his dream of being either the hegemon of the Chinese world or creating the first Chinese empire, since that endeavor would be achieved by the Qin Principality much later in 221 BCE. I stop here for now before going further, because I would like to know if you have questions or commands, and don't be shy, because I am quite drowned in Chinese history and Chinese philosophy since my childhood. So I might say things that are obvious for me, but that would not be obvious for you. So don't be shy. If you have question, just go for it. Okay, so Jason, I would have to ask you to
Okay, let's go
moderate
from
for me, because
Lyndon and the CK. Lyndon, please.
okay.
Thanks. Thanks for that. I have a question about relating the four seeds to the timeless Platonic concepts. It seems to me that it's very possible to read the four seeds in a humanistic way, that they're personality potentials which can be developed, and a fair amount of modern, or contemporary, I should say, psychological research has gone in a similar path. And a most famous example is Jonathan Haidt's moral foundations theory. So I'd like to ask, how can it be so certain that those seeds should be read as like a metaphysical bridge to like a timeless Platonic realm, and why? Because it seems on the face of it, that's capable of a very humanistic reading, that these are personal characteristics which can be personally cultivated without necessarily connecting to any transcendent realm, and any unity will be created by human action rather than connecting to a pre-existing transcendent realm.
Thanks, Lyndon, for your very interesting question, because it's a very foundational question. I would say that the Confucian school, a little bit like the Platonic school, would posit the hypothesis that in human learning, we are not blank slate on which we can develop higher virtues, if you want. Okay, I don't know if that's what you mean by humanistic, meaning that there is no need for a metaphysical realm to be the foundation of what we are
Yes.
developing. That's very interesting, and I would say that it's probably the two standpoints of human education. Since you seem to approve what I just said, the humanistic standpoint would say that we human are biological beings, and by social interaction and nice and kind training, we can be brought to be virtuous and gentlemen, if you want. Okay, to use a Confucian word. In the Confucian school and the Platonic school, they posit the fact that we are capable to be brought by a epistemological growth or path to develop those virtues, political or behavioral virtues, it's because precisely those virtues are already present in us. Were they not already present in us under the form of seeds, we would not be capable to develop them. Okay, and before going further, I would like to say that the beauty in Chinese is say yi, and yi doesn't mean beauty. Yi means justice. So the Chinese prefer to talk about beauty using the political word for beauty rather than beauty as beauty. And goodness is a run, and a run, as you probably already know since you're someone who likes to read Confucianism, is probably the central virtue in Confucianism. Okay, if you read the Analects or the Confucianist text, run is coming back, I think, very often. It's a recurring theme and a recurring virtue to be reflected often. And the truth in Chinese is Tao. Okay, Tao, the same Tao that in Taoism, but Tao here in the sense of the way to truth. Okay, because the Chinese, rather than to say Zheng, which is the Chinese word for truth, they prefer to use a metonymic transfer, meaning that they would say way, the way to the truth, for naming the truth. Okay, that the lexical parenthesis being said. I would say that what you just say is a little bit the same position between Plato and Aristotle, okay? Because in Aristotle, in his metaphysics and his Nicomachean ethics, he would posit that it's possible, what you call humanistic, from a blank slate to develop those virtue by social interaction and by right instructions. And but the Platonic perspective and the Confucian perspective would say that it would not be possible to develop those cardinal virtues were they not already given at the beginning. And I wouldn't give an example which is not a proof, but it's a kind of parallel to make understood the Platonic position and the Confucian position. We know enough about neurobiology nowadays to know that we have in our brain areas that are called the Broca areas and the Wernicke areas, which are a brain structure allowing us humans to develop language. Okay, but you need those brain structure, but you also need social interaction in order to be capable to speak and articulate language, okay, being Chinese, English, French, or any language. While it's the same reasoning with Plato and Confucius, if you don't have that potential at the beginning, metaphysically speaking, you would not be capable, even with social interaction, to develop those seeds. And I'm so grateful for your question, but because it's a very foundational question on the question of education. And I would like to remind everyone that education comes from Latin educare, meaning to bring forth what is from within. Okay, and precisely from the Platonic and Confucian perspective, what is from within are precisely those timeless forms of beauty, goodness, and truth translated into the four cardinal virtues in terms of behavior and in the political dimension.
Thanks for that, Quan. I appreciate what you're saying, but just and not to get into a debate, but just to clarify what I'm saying, I think I'm not saying it's a blank slate position, but I'm using humanistic to mean saying that those seeds or neurobiological potentials are within us as part of our humanity, that we're born with them biologically as potentials that can be cultivated and developed. So there's no need to deploy a Platonic concept of forms or of eternal external ideals. It seems to me what Mencius is saying, these are internal capacities that humans have that can be cultivated, and that it seems to me like the Platonic element is something which can be added on to that, but doesn't appear to me to be necessarily mandated by the text of the Mencius. So that's what I mean by a humanistic interpretation.
Yes, I understand perfectly what you say, and but I would like to, not necessarily in the sense of a debate, but I would like to say that,
just clarifying what I was saying. Yes.
No, and I think that we understand perfectly each other, and that is what is important.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think that we all will have a different opinion. So I appreciate, we just agree on our disagreement, then we can move.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. And people know me and Kwang a lot. We we are many parts are very different, but you know, I'm going to bring my difference later. So okay, let's go to CK and go to Ahad. Okay, thank you. CK, please.
Hi, CK.
Yes, I mean, at this section of the Mengzi, you were saying earlier, Quan, about the dialectical relationship between the ruler and the ruled. Mengzi, as far as I'm aware, was also the first proponent of the sovereignty of the people, that the people should come first, followed by the state and society, and finally by the ruler. So the ruler is the least important of these three entities. In Chinese, it's called 民为贵，社稷次之，君为轻. I think he was the proponent of this way of thought. And in Chinese, it's quite precious because it's one of what they call the 民本 thought, meaning the people's as the foundation, the people's as the basic organizing principle of society, way of thought, which was not in some ways, you know, according to some people or some philosophers, fully developed in Chinese society, in political thought, or in Chinese philosophy. What is your view?
Well, I'm very grateful to you, CK, for having brought that notion of sovereignty of the people. And I think that you quoted perfectly the part of the Mencius justifying that idea that the ruler, well, Qing, as you already know, means the one who weighs the less heavy, okay, the lightest one, meaning the less important one. And wow, that is perfectly the philosophical justification for the sovereignty of the people, and having been written 24 centuries ago. So thank you very much for stressing that major idea from Mencius.
So Ahad, you still have a question or comment?
Yep. I think continuing with what Lyndon had to say about the seeds and how we usually connect it with external ideals. I had an example when I was reading the text as well. There was this like a long time when maybe I was in 5th grade. I used to read about Shi dynasty, and there was a point where we were taught that yes, he is a tyrant, and he ruled on like quite a vast way of land. And I think that the one question was that when he died, his whole statue and there were, you know, erected towers of him that were buried alongside living people as well. The ones that served under him are also buried. So when I was reading this, so was that the way of like standard of preserving beauty or preserving a way of life, or because with that is with virtues and external ideals, I think, because one concept is just like virtues, just virtue in itself, and then there is virtues with more ideals, more developing that. So here, even in this text, when I was reading it back and forth, that's how I got that inspiration. I just, it clicked to me that where it says, it says, where may I profit, or profit my family, profit myself. I think that's where I got the inspiration, and it just clicked me. So is that a fable, or is it like a spirit ideal form, or it really exists?
I would say that it's you are at one of the center, or maybe at the center of Confucianism. Okay, let's not forget that Mencius is called Ya Sheng in Confucianism, meaning the second sage. The ideal of Confucianism is aran, okay, goodness translated as humanity and as valor. While that aran is the paramount virtue of the gentleman, and the gentleman in Chinese is Junzi. So that gentleman precisely is the man in his ordinary life, or a man with the political responsibilities, which is centered on precisely goodness, valor, humanity, justice, and wisdom in his action rather than profit. Okay, so that idea between the plutocratic rulers motivated by profits, wealth, and power for themselves versus the aristocratic ruler. Aristocratic here doesn't necessarily mean that you are from a noble family, okay, from a noble hereditary family, but rather that you develop your mind, your heart, and your soul. And that aristocratic ruler or Junzi, the gentleman, would be more motivated by by goodness, beauty, and truth in his role rather than by profits, as has been stressed very clearly in that first page of the Mencius. Of course, that epistemological journey from a personal perspective and from a state perspective on universal history perspective is not an endeavor that is finished. Okay, we are still on that epistemological journey on a personal level and on a collective level, of course. Jason, who would be the next one?
Let's go to Joe. Then I have a question. So,
okay.
Yeah, I just have a really quick question. I mean, because I understand that courtesy was one of those things that were considered important to Mencius, and it was mostly courtesy, something that's cultivated through like ritual, through Confucius like type of ritual, and that's essentially the way that you would actually cultivate that virtue.
Okay. Yes. Well, rituals. I propose another translation for rituals. Okay. I suggest healthy behavior for ritual. Healthy behavior. So that healthy behavior ideally would not be make it or fake it until you make it, but rather would be a natural flow from your inner state. Of course, in the teaching of Confucianism, we had many clumsy teachers, okay, who would make people understood or believe that it would be more fake it until you make it, or be a hypocrite, in other words. But in the true understanding of Confucianism, it should flow from your inner state, that ritual or that spontaneous healthy behavior.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do have two things I'd like to address, and then okay. So first, I really appreciate the Kwang, you talk about the good beauty and the truth, so-called I call it aesthetic trinity. Okay, so and
yeah, I like it, aesthetic trinity.
And compared to Ren, which is benevolence in some time, or humanity, and Yi, okay, which you compare or make it equal sign to beauty, but most people translate as righteousness, and the Tao, which we consider as a way, but it's a truth. I think these three match perfect, but I will put a but only in the moral sense, because if you go outside the morality, let's go to the Taoism teaching, I will disagree, but I agree on only in the Confucian moral sense. These three match perfect. How do you think?
Well, Jason, you will have the surprise of your life today. I agree 1000% with you, because it is about the epistemological development, and it is metaphysical morality, of course.
Well, thank you. That's our real agreement on that. So second part, I read this one, the 1A-1, the first chapter. I read this one is an opening section, and my reading is basically it Mencius make it very clear. Okay, our philosophy is not utilitarian. We are deontologist, deontology philosophy, right? So the King Hui of Liang, you can consider the Xi Jinping or the Biden, right? First, say the people consultant come here, hey, old man, what benefit for my country? And then Mencius answer first is you ask the wrong question. Don't talk about profit. We talk about righteous, talk about moral. I think that's set a tone very clear for the Confucius teaching. That's the part I think it's great. Yeah.
Yes, and I am very grateful. Yes, okay. Confucianism is a school with ontological foundation. And from that ontological foundation, there is an epistemological way that is proposed in order to embody those that ontological dimension on earth or in physical reality or in time reality. What I call in a grandiose manner, space-time energy matter dimension. Is there okay?
Is it my turn?
Yes,
Yes.
please.
Yeah, I have a funny observation which I just thought of. You know, imagine today, Mencius is behaving like, in a way, like politicians in the United States today, whereby they'll go around the world telling people, lecturing other states about human rights, democracy, and civil liberties, etc. When all these states want, what I was asking the question, what benefit are you bringing to my state? If you don't have any benefit to my state, I don't want to listen. So Mencius is encountering the same problem 2,400 years ago when King Hui of Liang, Hui Wang, refused to listen because there's nothing that Mencius is saying to him that he cannot use immediately to benefit his state and his position. So it's very human, really.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say that you put here a very interesting topic, okay? Because at that time, the rulers were much more interested in technocratic advisors, capable to advise them for making better weapons or better organization of the army or better control of their population rather than lofty metaphysical considerations. That you're very right to stress that, CK. But I suppose that a skillful ruler, I would use the word the skillful, would be a gentleman capable of a realpolitik, okay? And I would say that it would be the perfect ruler, because a ruler lost in the clouds of metaphysical consideration but completely feckless on the realpolitik dimension would not be a good ruler. But a ruler completely drowned in the realpolitik dimensions of profits at not having at least a bit of the higher dimension of justice, humanity, wisdom, and valor would be a jerk too. So I would say that the perfect ruler is Confucius plus Sun Tzu.
Wow, that is very hard to find one.
Yes, perfect. Well, we are in the philosophical group, CK. We are for the perfect and for the ideal.
Yes, the philosopher king. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Jason, are there others?
There's no more hand now.
Okay, all right. So maybe Jason, can you show the maps, the 3 maps that you prepare, please?
This one is the spring and autumn.
Yeah, exactly.
So you are
okay,
showing,
so
this one is the I think this two will be better. This one, okay. Which one you want?
yeah, I think you're right. You're right. That's the perfect for the spring and autumn. And so maybe, okay, now you show, okay, maybe let the spring and autumn for maybe 10 seconds. Okay, so please have a look on that map. It's a map of the Chinese world around 500 BCE, okay, so 25 centuries ago, about at the time of Confucius. In 500 BCE, Confucius was 51 years old, since he was born in 551 BCE. And Mencius was not born, since he was born in 372 BCE. So you can see that the Zhou royal house, since their crushing defeat in 770 BCE, were not truly kings, but only control models and political arbiters. And so the Chinese world was fragmented in numerous principalities, and you see that not all principalities were equal. Okay, so now can you show the one of the Warring State period? Okay, here it's up in 260 BCE, so it's about 40 years before the creation of the first Chinese empire in 221 BCE by the Qin Principality. Okay, so the Qin Principality is the one in dark pink to the west. And you see that the other major one is the Chu Principality and the Qi Principality. Okay, the Wei Principality or the Liang Principality, who was ruled by King Hui between 369 BCE and 319 BCE, is the one at the center. You see Wei just above the Han Principality. So you see that those 7 principalities will be, those 6 principalities will be destroyed by the Qin Principality, the kingdom who would be the victor and the creator of the first Chinese empire in 221 BCE. Okay, thank you, Jason. Before going further, do you have a question or comments on the historical period, on the process of empire creation? Okay, I see CK hands. So go ahead, CK.
Yeah, I have an observation on the first, regarding the first map, whereby if you look, the state of Wu is included, but the state of Yue is excluded.
Very interesting.
Yes. What does that really mean? Does that mean that the state of Wu is admitted into the era of civilized states, whereas the state of Yue is not? It's outside the realm and beyond the pale. Is that what it's supposed to mean? The second question is where were the borders of the state of Yue? I mean, it's vaguely defined, isn't it?
Yes, right. And you're right, because in 500 BCE, the state of Yue existed. And I think that your explanation based on cultural pretensions is very brilliant. And at the time, I would like to add a geopolitical note, okay? The state of Wu, they had the pretension of, that their rulers had the pretensions of being remote cousins of the Zhou royal house. But in reality, they were relatively backward at that time, okay? Let's say at the time of Confucius. And it was a revenge by the state of Qin against the state of Chu, which is the big state to the south. And I am explaining it the following way. At the time of Confucius, the major state of the Central Plain was the state of Qin, okay, Jin, who would be fragmented into 3 states, Wei, Han, and Zhou later on in 453 BCE. So that state of Qin, before its fragmentation into 3 kingdoms, was the main rival of the state of Chu. And that state of Qin sent military and political advisor to the backward state of Wu to the east to make them stronger in order to be a pain in the ass for the state of Chu, their rivals. So just to tell you guys that geopolitical games were already quite active in China 25, 26 centuries ago.
Yeah, but I just want to add that even the state of Wu was not really considered a civilized state, and the state of Wu was not actually considered that civilized by the central states.
Absolutely, and from a true historical perspective, we can put question mark on their pretensions to be cousins of the Zhou royal house, but it's possible if we respect tradition.
Yeah, I also like to add on not only Yue and Wu is not considered a true civilized state. Even Chu, right, on this corner, Chu, it is considered as a foreign, a bit long time. And the Qin on this side, at that time, people probably not really respect them on that side. So only the if I have drawn the line, only like this area, being considered as the civilized, and the Qin, Chu, all the powerful state not being considered. And second thing I'd like to point out, if you have a question on how do we divide the spring and the autumn and the warring state, the clear line is this. The powerful state, Jin here, right? It's one of the most powerful state. And the moment becomes 3 states, okay? And that's the cut line between warring state and the warring state, okay? Because they used to have 6 families and fight each other. And then during that time, they decide to remove their kin and then divided the land to 3 states. And that's the time we will consider the landmark or the moment as a warring state. Okay, so I think that's the thing I'd like to offer. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And since we are in talks about the military feats of ancient China, I would like to mention 3 battles that I think is good to know in terms of the change in mentality in the Chinese world. Okay, the first battle that I would like to mention is the Battle of Xuge, X-U-G-E, and that battle happened in 707 BCE. In that battle, the son of King Ping of the Zhou dynasty has been defeated, and he has been wounded on his left shoulder, I think. Because if you guys remember, I said that in 770 BCE, the Zhou royal house suffered a crushing defeat, and they were not truly king. But however, the Chinese were patient enough to wait for a rejuvenation of that dynasty for a whole 50 years, because the king who ruled from 770 BCE to 720 BCE, he had a very long reign of 50 years, was King Ping of the Zhou dynasty. And the Chinese were still respected enough the dynasty to wait for a revival. And that reign of the King Ping of the Zhou dynasty of the Eastern Zhou has been quite mediocre. And he was succeeded by his son, King Huan, H-U-A-N, of the Zhou dynasty. And because of a quarrel with his cousins of the Zheng kingdom, Z-H-E-N-G to the east, they had a battle in 707 BCE precisely, so about 63 years after the Eastern Zhou dynasty era. And King Huan lost that battle. And from that moment, it was the true end of the Zhou dynasty in terms of political revival. The Chinese lost not completely respect for the dynasty, because till the end in 256 BCE, they were still considered as political arbiters and control models. But it was clear in the minds of the Chinese of the time that a new dynasty will appear, but it will only appear many years later in 221 BCE. The second battle that I would like to mention that reflecting that mentality and is related to the Mencius precisely. When I said that the perfect ruler would be a combination, would be Mencius or Confucius plus Mengzi, meaning a gentleman preoccupied by justice, valor, and humanity, but also capable of realpolitik. And I would say that those realpolitik considerations was at the center of the ruler's preoccupation from that Battle of Sucre in 707 BC to the creations of the empire. And the other battle that I would like to mention is the Battle of Hongshui, Hongshui. And in that Battle of Hongshui happening in 638 BCE, Duke Xiang of Song lost the battle because he wanted to behave like a gentleman and to let his enemy cross the river rather than attacking them when they were crossing the river, because they were in a vulnerable position. So his insistence to keep on aristocratic traditions that were no longer appropriate, no longer adapted to those times, make him lost the battle. And let's not forget that the true period of the warring states would only begin in 453 BCE, as Jason explained very well 15 minutes ago. But you already have a taste of the shifting of mentality in a gentlemanly behavior at battle to a more, maybe the word is not perfect, but to a more industrialized battles formation. And the last battle I want to mention in relation to that is the Battle of Boju, B-O-J-U, happening in 506 BCE. And that battle was precisely directed or supervised by Sun Tzu. And that was the first major battle between the kingdom of Wu and the kingdom of Chu precisely, being a perfect example of the new military framework, which is or which was what I call the more industrialized form of military confrontations rather than the old gentlemen's games of the past. So I see that Jason wants to say something.
Yeah, I'd like to say one thing about the first paragraph we read. I don't know, is this historical event or not? I have no idea. But if that's true, you will see how brave, okay, of Mencius. Back to the history, right? In the Jin, this time in the spring and the autumn time, Jin, this country is the most powerful state. And I just talk about the time mark as a warring state is the Jin has been split to 3 states, Zhao, Wei, and Han. And the Wei is the largest one. Okay, remember in the first paragraph, we talk about King Hui of Liang. Liang is the powerful king on this one. Okay, so that means these 3 family kill their king, depose their king, and split the land. And the Wei, the king of Wei, get the largest piece of that. And this one is a powerful, so he was used to be the most powerful state. And they split, and they are the 3 parts of the meat, the biggest part. So he's the king of king during this time, the most potential. And look at how Mencius answer his question. He said, when those higher and the lower compete with each other with profit, the state will be in danger. The state of sovereign war chariot and the man who assassinate the ruler will be surely the family estate of one sovereign. So he's talking about him, okay? He is doing this. So in this way, Mencius is very brave to talk about. Probably he's not really brave, because at that time, the moral standard is not there. And the King Hui of Liang may say, hey, that's what I did. That's a heroic behave, the heroic deed. I don't feel shame of that. But, that's in Mencius word is talking about you. Sir, you did this, right? And that's the problem. Be careful. The people under you will follow you doing the same thing. Split your state. Okay, I think that's how the tone underline, if you want to read it, on this paragraph.
Absolutely. And you gave me the perfect transition, Jason, because I think there's no other hands if okay. You gave me the perfect transition because I want to read the next part of the Mencius, which is on the section 1A2. If Jason, you want to make it appear, please. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will read the short text. So Mencius appeared in audience before King Hui of Liang. The king was standing by a pond in his park land, gazing at the deer and wild geese around it. Do worthy men also delight in things such as this? He asked. Mencius replied, only when one is worthy may one delight in them. Though the unworthy may possess them, they cannot take delight in them. The poetry says, so the poetry is about the Shu Jing, the classics of songs, having poetry coming from the Zhou dynasty. So the king began his magic tower, planning it and spanning it. The people set themselves to work. In no time it was done. He started it with no great haste. The people simply came. The king was in his magic park. The deer and doe lay all around. The deer and doe all glistening sleek. The white birds gleaming bright. The king was at his magic pond. How full of leaping fish. The king relied upon the labor of the people to build his tower and his pond, and the people took joyful delight in it. Hence, they call his tower the magic tower and his pond the magic pond, delighting in the deer and fish that were there. The men of old shared the delight with the people. That is why they knew delight. But the oath of time says, when shall this son die, that I may share death with you? The people then so wish the ruler's death. Though one may have towers, pools, birds, and beasts, how can you enjoy them alone? Okay, so here we have a vivid and poetic, I would say, description of the ideal ruler, once again, who would share his glory with his people. And I would say that not only Mencius describe the sovereignty of the people, as CK rightly stressed half an hour ago, but also the right interaction between the ruler and his subjects. And of course, here we have to understand it's within the framework of the idealistic Confucian school, okay? And as CK rightly stressed, and Jason also rightly stressed, that school has had and has ontological preoccupations of an ideal world to which we have to go through personal epistemological development that would translate into universal history, okay? What I call the Gongyang interpretation of the Chunchu, okay? Universal history is the direction of history and our political organization that would be the natural consequence of the epistemological development of as many humans as possible. And in that sense, I repeat myself, the Confucian school is an idealistic school with ontological foundation and the direct rapprochement for me with the West is the Platonic school. Before going further, question, interaction, comments? Because my last section would be on the 4 seats, and I would end my presentation with the 4 seats. But before going to the 4 seats, comments, questions?
Yeah.
Okay, Jason.
If nobody says something, I also like to offer my reading on this second chapter. I think I think this one also shows how Mencius, okay, attitude, right? And he's much more how to say it, different than Confucius. It's just not like Confucius, just spur out the good words. Okay, he kind of try to teach the emperor. Okay, you can see the rich country, the emperor has enjoyed a lot of wonderful things. And the Mencius used this chance to educate him, to tell him that's not a bad thing, you know, that's a wonderful thing, as long as you share with people. So in the today's sense, we will talk about a good president or good leadership develop the culture, okay, to the whole country. Also use the chance to promote the culture, and all the people were together with the culture. And or you talk about art, right, literature, philosophy, all this kind of thing. So that's the another unusual part, I would say, you know, in the Mencius situation. Number one, he noticed the entertaining is one of the you can say it's a tool to unite with the people, or you can say probably also the end, not only the means, also the ends of the country or a state development. And his method is pretty, I think it's very good, you know, in this way. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree perfectly with Jason. I think today, Jason, is not a normal day. We agree on along since the last 90 minutes. I would say that I agree with that, but because I want to remind the endeavor of the mandate of heaven, right? Because once again, there are many ways to define the mandate of heaven, Tianming in Chinese, but essentially the mandate of heaven is the ruler has to take into account reality and his people, and has to guarantee order, peace, food, and by food I mean transportation, shelter, etc., clothing, and education. Okay, and it's part of education precisely than to offer high quality entertainment. Okay, because education is not education only in school, but also in social interactions, and high quality entertainment is part of education. So are there other questions or comments? If not, I go to the core essential of Confucius, meaning the 4 seats. Okay, we will read together the 4 seats, meaning the section 2A6 together. So question, comments before going to the 4 seats? Okay, I count to 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, no questions, no comments. Let's go to the 4 seats. Jason, can you make appear the text on the 4 seats 2A6, please? Okay, perfect. It's done. Okay, so 2A6 or 3.6, okay, paragraph 2A6 or paragraph 3.6 is one of the major sections of the Mencius. Okay, so is anyone interested to begin to read that, please? Lyndon, would you be interested to keep on your endeavor of reading?
Well, I'm happy to keep reading it if nobody else is willing to volunteer. So where'd it go? Oh, there it is. Yes. Okay, I'll start reading now.
Okay, let's go.
Mencius said, all people possess within them a moral sense that cannot bear the suffering of others. The former kings had such a moral sense, and thus they devised means of government that would not allow people to suffer. If a ruler were to employ the moral sense that makes human suffering unendurable in order to implement such humane government, he would find bringing the entire world into order to be simple, as though he were turning the world in his hand. Why do I say that all people possess within them a moral sense that cannot bear the suffering of others? Well, imagine now a person who all of a sudden sees a small child on the verge of falling down into a well. Any such person would experience a sudden sense of fright and dismay. This feeling would not be something he summoned up in order to establish good relations with the child's parents. He would not purposefully feel this way in order to win the praise of their friends and neighbours, nor would he feel this way because the screams of the child would be unpleasant. I need
Okay.
Right.
Just,
I'll continue.
yes, please.
By imagining this situation, we can see that one who lacked a sense of dismayed commiseration in such a case simply could not be a person. Moreover, anyone who lacks the sense of shame cannot be a person. Anyone who lacks a sense of deference cannot be a person. Anyone who lacks a sense of right and wrong cannot be a person. The sense of commiseration is the seed of humanity. The sense of shame is the seed of righteousness. The sense of deference is the seed of ritual, and the sense of right and wrong is the seed of wisdom. Everyone possesses these four moral senses, just as they possess their four limbs. To possess such seeds and yet claim to be unable to call them forth is to rob oneself. And for a person to claim that his ruler is incapable of such moral feeling is to rob his ruler. As we possess these four senses within us, if only we realise that we need to extend and fulfil them, then the force of these senses will burst through us like a wildfire, first catching, or a spring first bursting forth through the ground. If a person can bring these impulses to fulfilment, they will be adequate to bring all the four quarters under his protection. But if a person fails to develop these senses, he will fail even to serve his own parents.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see CK's hand. Do you want to say something before I make my comment?
No, actually, I think I forgot to lower the hand, so I will do it now.
Okay, cool. So here we have one of the cores of Mencius ideas, okay? So I would like to read again some lines. Here. It's at the second page, third paragraph, fourth line, fifth line. To possess such seeds and yet claim to be unable to call them forth is to rob oneself, and for a person to claim that his ruler is incapable of such moral feelings is to rob his ruler. Okay, so I want to read again the first two lines of that short segment. To possess such seeds and yet claim to be unable to call them forth is to rob oneself. Okay, so here, to call them forth or to bring forth what is from within, okay, I remind you the etymology of education, educare, and educare is precisely to bring forth what is from within, okay, to call them forth according to those last lines that I just read. And that is precisely one illustration of the fundamental ontological nature of the Confucian school, okay? That they believe precisely in that metaphysical background. And once again, I'm very grateful to Lyndon having brought that difference in perspective at the very beginning of our discussion, because I would say that if we were to enter into a debate, it would be a quite long philosophical debate, but only to stress that philosophically speaking and epistemologically speaking, you have those two basic human perspectives, okay? That social interaction, a right social interaction, a benevolent social interaction would spontaneously bring out those things. And you have those philosophers that is most of the time labeled as idealistic or realist, okay? Because here, I would like to introduce a technical detail. Plato or Confucius can be labeled as idealist, and that idealist is easy to understand. It's from ideas in English, or referring to eidos, okay? E-I-D-O-S in Greek, the forms, meaning the metaphysical forms in the timeless dimension. That is easy to understand, idealist. But sometimes, and that it can be quite confusing, they are also called realist. But here you have to understand that realist is not about the space-time energy matter reality, okay? Realist here is about the reality of the timeless forms of beauty, goodness, and truth. So if, but in your readings, that you find that sometimes Plato and the Confucianist school is called realist, is exactly equal to idealist, because they believe in the reality of the timeless idea of beauty, goodness, and truth. And that is to be understood as realist and not in space-time energy matter. And I close here my little technical parenthesis. Okay, before going further, question, comments, okay, I see Jason having his hands up. Please, Jason.
Yeah, same thing. I would like to offer my impression on this text. I think the importance here is talking about his moral theory here, right? He is a moral sentimentalist, right? Just like a Scottish school, if you want to compare, like Shaftesbury or Adam Smith, that's a moral sensualist. Okay, so basics, or David Hume, we have the sense of the moral. It's different than Kant, right? We talk about rationale because you have the reason to do good, not like, so I think that's the key difference, because he, from the beginning, Mencius talking about we all born with the moral sense, which set the difference. And second thing, he talking about the moral cultivation is development. Okay, it's not, so I think that's also important. And one thing I think Dr. Eno mentioned, I read Dr. Eno, he talked about the case of the kids fall into a whale. Okay, that's also a very good thought experiment, which we don't see on other texts, but Mencius talk a lot about different kind of thought experience. If something is so he talked about the fable of this one. So in this way, reading Mencius is much more interested than reading Confucius text, because he constantly give you example. And here is a good example talking about. He just tell you in this situation, how do you feel, right? You see the kids falling down. The first thing you do is to save him. You are not thinking about, if I don't save him, people will complain about me. You don't think about, like, if I save him, so his parents will give me reward. Nobody think about this, you just save it. Everybody do it, and what's this? That's your moral sense. And then develop from this, everyone will become a moral person. I think that's the important part on this sense. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's one of the central tenets of Confucianism, is to say that we all possess those natural proclivities to the good, and the difference between different human beings reside precisely in the fact that those seeds have been developed or have not been developed. Okay, so you all know the theory from Confucianism that that human beings are naturally born good. Okay, there's one exception in the Confucian school, but Sun Tzu, X-U-N, Sun Tzu, meaning master Sun. And except for him, all Confucianists think that the human beings are born naturally good. Okay, so I see the hand of Sri Vida. So please go ahead, Sri Vida.
You can.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. Forgive me if I mispronounce your name.
Oh, no, it's pronounced as Sri Vidya, but you're fine. So I had this, I find this very interesting that the sentence that all people possess with them a moral sense that cannot bear the suffering of others. It is possible that all might possess it in the beginning, maybe when they were born, but is it possible that they may lose that sense based on their life experience, if they go through a lot of stress, or if can that moral sense disappear, or can that be like suppressed or masked, is something which I wanted to ask, because I see a lot that people do see a lot of suffering around, but a lot of people are either too stressed or they're too busy, or there's always something which prevents them from helping out. So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I am very grateful for your question, because that's at the center of education precisely. Because the fundamental assumption of all idealistic school is precisely you have an animal dimension and or a time dimension. I prefer to say time dimension and timeless dimension, okay? Because it's also called the animal dimension and the divine dimension. But animal and divine can be understood a little bit like a judgment. So I much prefer time dimension and timeless dimension. Sri Vidya, as you said, in the time dimension, someone could have gone through a lot of ordeals or of suffering, and it might affect his or her capabilities to develop the seeds precisely. And the metaphor of the seeds is perfect, okay? Because a seed is something that has to be nurtured. And if it's not nurtured rightly or long enough or intense enough, that seed will die, or that seed will not produce a very great tree, okay? Because that seed might either die, or that seed might produce a small tree, a mediocre tree, or that seed might rightly nurture and rightly taken care of, become a massive tree, given shelter to many people, okay? That is the classical metaphor used in Chinese philosophy, is that if that you are a seed that is that becomes a great tree, you can give shelter to many people. So of course, you're perfectly right, and that is precisely the endeavor of education, that then to take care of those seeds so that they all become a big tree capable to give shelter to the person having those seeds, but also to other people. And sadly, sometimes people are born in difficult situations and don't have the possibility of developing their metaphysical seeds. Absolutely. And I see that Jason wants to say something.
Yeah, two things. First, I like to talk about the moral sense, right? On the very first beginning, Mencius talking about the all people possess have this kind of moral sense, and then if you feel like it sounds so natural, but you will see if you read Kant will immediately reject this one. He say we cannot rely on the moral sense because people are born different. Okay, so we need to do the other way. So I think that's not, you compare, that's a very go to opposite direction. But I'm not here to discuss who is right, who is wrong, who is better, who is not so good. So the point I'd like to continue is on the Mencius talk about human nature is good, and which Xunzi talk about human nature is bad. I think their human nature they are talking about this not on the general philosophical point of view. I think they have the political purpose. I think Mencius' point, why Mencius talk about human nature is good. He is talking to the ruler, okay? Don't blame on people, okay? I have to do this because people do blah, blah. He want to talk about people are naturally good, okay? But later on he will talk about, and he is not naive to say, oh, all people are good. He all recognize they have the robber, they have the thief, they have the murderer, you know, they have the bad people. And then he start to talk about why they are bad, because the environmental are bad. Okay, so I think the purpose of Mencius is want to tell the ruler, you see your people, some are bad because, you know, you did something, so why they become bad. So if you do the right thing, people were all good. I think that's his political reason to say human nature is good. And same as Xunzi said human nature is bad because he wanted the ruler treat human or their people in a different way, reward and the punishment.
Yes, and I would say that this very interesting comment by Jason pushed me to say that within Chinese civilization, there has always been that invitation to personal epistemological development, or if you want, an invitation to develop your mind, your heart, and your soul. And that is the preferred pathway, of course. But the Chinese state has always, and it's not the first time that I'm saying this in this group, but the Chinese state is a legalist state, okay? Meaning that what is the two Chinese words of fa jia is most of the time in English book translated as legalism, but that legalism doesn't have anything to do with law in the Western meaning. That legalism rather means principles and practices of statecraft and administration, okay, or the art of the ruler. And the art of the ruler is first and foremost in the ideal situation to invite everyone to develop their mind, their heart, and their soul, of course. Once again, Chinese civilization is built on ontological foundations, meaning on idealistic foundations. However, the Chinese rulers were also practical men. They have legalisms as the tools through rewards and punishments for those who are not willing, or even worse, who are not capable to go on the epistemological journey. So you have to see the Chinese civilization as a civilization on idealistic foundation, but also capable of realpolitik. If I want to make a cursory comparison of with the West, you have Christianity also inviting people to develop their minds, their heart, and their soul, or for those not having religious proclivity, the different philosophical schools inviting people to develop their heart, their minds, and their souls. But you also have Machiavelli or other people proposing very down-to-earth legalist positions or principles and practices of statecraft and administration for population management. And I would like to finish with the etymology of the word the government. The English word the government comes from two Latin words, gobernare and mantis. And gobernare mantis means to be at the helm of the mind or to control the mind. And that is the essence of all government. And I'm not saying that in a cynical manner, because controlling the mind of the people doesn't mean necessarily controlling in a bad manner, okay? You can control the mind of the people by offering a good education, by proposing a right epistemological growth, but it also entails the possibility of controlling the mind of people through propaganda, through storytelling, through different kind of narratives, expounding the perspective of the ruling class. So I would say that it's a everlasting dialectics or interactions between the invitation to epistemological development, which is, after all, our personal responsibility in each of us, or applying the principles and practices of statecraft and administration, more involving rewards and punishments. And before I go to my last part of this presentation, I would like to know if there are other comments and questions, because I just want to read the last 3 pages of the Mencius that I think would close perfectly my presentation today. So question, comments, etc. Okay. Okay, so if there are no interaction, I would like to read the last 3 pages, which correspond to 183, Jason. Okay, thank you. Okay, so, and it's very interesting because it's more about the rulers, and as Jason stressed very rightly, Confucianism, either through Confucius, Mencius, or other philosophers, of course, is something offered to everyone, but that school stressed very much on the education of the ruler. And I would like to read those 3 pages stressing on the education of the ruler precisely. So, King Hui of Liang said, "My attitude towards my state is simply to exhaust my every effort on its behalf. If in Hernay there is famine, I move people to Hedong and grain to Hernay. And likewise, also if the case is reversed. When I examine governance in neighboring states, none is as conscientious as mine. Yet the population of those states does not decrease, and that of mine does not increase. Why is this so?" Mencius replied, "Your Majesty loves war, so let me use an analogy from war to explain. Picture the drums beating your soldiers into battle. The swords of the armies have clashed. Suddenly, you men strip off their heavy armor and run, trailing their weapons behind them. Some run for 100 paces, others stop after 50. If the men who had retreated only 50 paces began to laugh at those who had run 100, what would you think of them? That they were wrong to do so. They haven't run 100 paces, but they have still run away." Mencius said, "If your Majesty understand this, then you need not look for the population of your state to grow over those of your neighbors. If a state does not interfere with the people during the growing season, there will be more grain than the people can eat. If you regulate fishing nets so that fine woven ones may not be used in the pools and ponds, there will be more fish than the people can eat. If you allow hatchets and axes to be used in the woods only in proper season, there will be more lumber than the people can use. When there is more grain and fish than the people can eat and more lumber than the people can use, the people can nourish their living and mourn their dead without regrets. That is the root of the Tao of the true king. When on every 5 moo homestead a mulberry tree is planted, people 50 and over are able to wear silk clothes. When chicken, pigs, and dogs are bred in a timely way, all who are 70 and over have meat to eat. If laborers in fields of 100 mu are not taken from their field work during growing season, then families with many mouths to feed will never go hungry. When the education given in village schools is extended by the example of behavior that is filial to parents and deferential to elders, then no one with white hair will carry heavy loads along the roads. There has never been a ruler who did not rule as a true king when those 70 and older wore silk and ate meat, and when the people were never hungry or cold. But now, when food is plentiful, dogs and pigs eat the people's food and none known to garner or store it. When food is scarce, people starve by the roadside and none know to open the storehouses and distribute grain. When men die, you say, it is not it is the weather's fault. How it is different from running them through with a spear and saying, it was not I, it is the spear's fault. Once your majesty ceases to blame the weather, people will come to you from everywhere in the world. So you have here a kind of short Mencian description of the mandate of heaven. Okay, so you see that he mentioned the duty or the endeavor of the ruler to ensure the presence of food, of order, of peace, and of education, the main item defined or summarized by the expression mandate of heaven, and that if you are in a ruling place, you are precisely responsible to guarantee those items. And I finish here my presentation. I don't know if you guys still have questions or comments. Okay, so I see the hands of Carly. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for that presentation. It elucidated a lot of things. My question I had was about the actual goods that the state helps provide is by setting boundaries and having rules that allow it to flourish. I obviously see a lot of a concurrence here with our environmental state that we live in currently. But can you speak more about how those rules are developed? Because Mencius is speaking kind of slyly to the leaders.
Yes, thank you for the word rules, because I would say that the Confucian school has always stressed on the fact that it's better or on a superior level, if you want, to develop the inner rules, okay? Because precisely the development of the seeds into the virtue of humanity, valor, justice, and wisdom. If you have those cardinal virtues, you have inner rules, and you would act like a gentleman, and you don't need outer rules to give a framework to you. And that is precisely the dialectical interactions between the Confucian invitation to epistemological growth, that is much better to you to be a gentleman, to have inner rules. But if it's not possible, the rulers, which is the main focus of the Confucian school, would have to create outer rules for people not having developed their heart, their minds, and their soul to a high level enough to be considered as gentlemen having their own inner roles. And you are very right that Mencius would stress more on the development of the cardinal virtue when speaking to the ruler, because he expects those rulers to create the outer roles. And if you want details on those outer roles, it's not necessarily the book of the Confucian school that you have to read. You have to read the different Fa Jia. You have to read the different school offering principles of and practices of statecraft and administration. And I can name you some of them. Sun Tzu is one of them, because I know that you're part of the reading group for the Sun Tzu. Li Kui is another one. Li Kui, Likui. Sheng Puhai is another one. Shenpuhai. And another famous one is also a classmate of the main advisor of the first emperor, which is Han Feizi, Hanfeizi. So if you are more looking on the outer roles created by advisors to the kings and to the emperors, it's not the Confucian school, but rather the Fa Jia, okay? Once again, principles and practices of statecraft and administration. The Confucian school would always stress on the epistemological development. Better for you to be gentlemen rather than be controlled from the outside by outer roles. Okay, I see. My pleasure. I see CK hands.
Yeah, I would like to add to the list of legalist thinkers and practitioners that you just mentioned, Quan. There is a very famous and important one that wasn't discussed. That is Shang Yang.
Oh, absolutely.
Shang Junshu, the Book of Lord Shang, which is a really important book in the legalist mode. Yeah.
Thank you so much, CK. How could have I forgotten Lord Shang, the guy who opened the way for the Qin kingdom to create the first Chinese empire in 221 BCE. Thanks again, CK.
So thank you, everyone. We at 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock or 7 o'clock time mark. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Kwang, and for this wonderful discussion and the presentation. Next week, same time, we will have a SK review on the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1 to 6, which is the first part. And the week after, June 3rd, I'm going to present the Zhuangzi, the chapter 3. You will see the same person, the King Hui of Liang, but at that time in the Zhuangzi, call it the King Hui of Wei. Okay, so the same person. Okay, in the Taoism description will be totally different interest person. You may know the fable, the so-called the cook Ding, the butcher, how to chop the beef. Okay, so that's the story. Nothing about political, about nurture your life. Okay, so 2 weeks from now, we will see the same powerful king, but in the different school, and we'll talk about different things. Okay, so thank you, everyone. Anybody have the last word? And so,
well, I want to thank Jason for preparing the slate, and thanks everyone for having come.
All right, thank you, everyone. And then same time, see you next week. And then we go to India, then go back to Taoism. And that's our, so see you.
Bye-bye.